Uh, Hi, everybody. I'm Gideon Jacobs. I'm a writer and artist based in Queens, New York. I'm currently sitting in my garage, which is also my studio. I've turned it into my studio, and there's snow on the ground outside here in New York. Um, yeah, so I just want to start by thanking you for tuning in today or tonight, depending on where you are. And thank you, Macro, for inviting me to do this. I love the premise of this series a lot. I think anyone who uses a computer regularly has a folder or two on their desktop that is kind of like a weird repository for, like I think before we were all on our computers all the time, there was the, drawer in our desk or the box in our attic or whatever that contained stuff that we weren't sure would be interesting to anyone, but we kept. And sometimes that weird box contains maybe more interesting stuff than what we display and share and call our art. So I hope that my version of that box in the attic, or my digital version of that box in the attic, is this folder on my desktop, which is simply titled Commercials. So just to give a little bit of backstory, before I was an adult and a writer, I was an actor. From about the age of 6 to about 17 or so, I did a handful of films and some television, and I was going on auditions every day after school, and I missed a lot of school actually to film stuff, and it was a big part of my childhood. Um, but more than film and TV shows, I did a lot of commercials. I did I think about like 150 commercials. Um, and about 5 or 10 years ago or so, I went over to my parents' house, and they had this like insane VHS library of all the tapes that the advertising agencies would send them after the commercials were finished filming. And all these tapes had like only the 15 or 30-second clip that that the commercial was. So I went through this like laborious, kind of annoying process of digitizing as many as I could. I really only took the ones that I thought were interesting because it was like a slow going process. Um, but ever since I went over my parents, I think it was like a Thanksgiving or Christmas or something. Ever since I was over there, I've had this uh, folder sitting on my desktop that I haven't really quite known what to do with. So I have been focused on fiction recently, on writing fiction. So there's a while where I was considering embedding these clips into a fictional narrative, kind of like mixing fiction with ephemera from my reality. There was a while where I conceived of the idea of doing like an installation using these videos. It would be a mix of text art and video art, but none of that felt quite right so far. So the folder has kind of sat here for quite a while, and I guess until now, sort of. Now, I think part of why I have, let's open it up. So I think part of why I have, or like haven't known what to do with this work or this content, is that I'm unsure sort of how to make sense of this strange period of my life. And I'm also a little bit unsure how to make sense of this strange period of American culture. So to me, there are loose parallels between my little micro reality of Gideon and the country's bigger macro reality at that point. Like, I think that decade, roughly bookended by the recession of the early 90s on one side, and let's say the financial crisis of the mid-aughts on the other side, with September 11th as a climax of sorts. I think in this period, both me as a person and America as a country, we're experiencing a time that I would say is characterized by some naive hubris and blind confidence, and a streak of unbridled growth and optimism. And I would say in also a parallel way that this stuff was being kind of artificially propped up by myths and by money. And money is, a myth of its own kind. So I see the end of this decade of time as both kind of the last moments of ignorant, greed is good American capitalism, and the last moments of my own kind of childhood ignorance, both of which I think were full of kind of cracks and pitfalls that are only apparent in retrospect. So for like the next, about 20 minutes or so, I'd like to look at some of these clips with you and unpack what they can tell us about this point of time, both on a personal and cultural level. So I'm going to play the first commercial. And the first thing I would like you to notice is like how insanely fast it happens. Because, well, 30 seconds on a national network costs like a great deal of money. So I'm going to play this first clip, but pay attention to just how quickly they're trying to squeeze content into this block of time in a way that, to me, makes it very clear this isn't, about your entertainment. They're trying to transmit as much data into your brain, as much information into your brain as quickly as possible. So let's play. This is a Burger King commercial.
This ride's for big kids.
I got a big kids meal from Burger King.
What's that?
It's got more food.
Why's it got more food?
Big kids need more food.
The tasty new Burger King Big Kids meal with more fun food, like 6-piece chicken tenders with gooey apple green slime dipping sauce.
He must be a big kid. Next.
Okay. Man. Okay, so let's find a good freeze frame here. I think let's choose the unbelievably disgusting looking green slime dipping sauce. Okay, so first thing I want to point out is that we are not the key demographic of this commercial, obviously. Like, I would say most commercials featuring children are generally aimed at other children. And I mean, I assume there's no children watching this. So yeah, we're not the key demographic. But I think that makes the conceit of this commercial very clear, which is that there are, big kids, and then those big kids are not little kids, and big kids do what they want, like ride roller coasters and eat total garbage. And so in a way, what Burger King is doing is creating a kind of imaginary higher class of kid, which has more privileges than this lower class of kid. So, I mean, maybe that's taking the reading of the commercial a bit far, but I do think there is something to the fact that Burger King was giving children who are still very much in their parents' charge the illusion of autonomy and agency, allowing them to transgress, but transgress in totally manageable ways, like eat this stuff. Now, another thing I really want to look at is my clothing in this commercial. I think that's kind of really telling. So most of the commercials I did in this era, they tried to dress me, let me just move my mouse. They tried to dress me extremely messily. They didn't comb my hair like they might have in earlier decades. In fact, they would mess it up. They would have me wear oversized sweatshirts and t-shirts. I mean, they would never really have me tuck in my shirt. And like, I think my shirt is like half tucked here, which I think is totally deliberate and this kind of intentional informality. Or, in fact, I even remember when I would go to the fittings for these commercials. So that's like when you go to the production office and they're choosing what you're going to wear for the commercial. These stylists would buy hundreds or even thousands of dollars of options for the director to choose from. And a lot of the times I remember the director like going through all the options and, you know, thinking about what I was going to wear, and then thinking he or she was having this moment of profundity when they would just say like, let's just have the kid wear what he was wearing when he walked in the door. So this to me defines this era of commercials, this kind of performed realness. Now, this was a moment in culture where consumers were starting to have some of the cynicism and skepticism that maybe characterizes our current climate more. But I think at that point, consumers were still naive enough to be fooled, you know, like still not savvy enough postmodernists to recognize that authenticity was an impossibility. I think it's worth remembering that this period of time I'm talking about is exactly when reality TV is starting to take over the world. This is like the total heyday of Big Brother, of Survivor, and I think that's no small coincidence. You know, we were at this unique moment when I think we wanted reality, when we craved realness, but had yet to reach the point when we recognized that even, you know, reality TV is highly scripted and produced. We hadn't yet realized that reality TV is a totally oxymoronic term. So I think we were hungry for something that felt truer than what we were fed in previous decades, but we were still pretty easy marks as consumers because we could be sold stuff that had aesthetic signifiers of truth. So I think this attempt at messy authenticity actually goes beyond my clothing and beyond my you know, disheveled hair. I think it extends to some extent to my my childhood voice. So I'd like to play a couple of actually animated commercials I did. And I guess what I want you to maybe think about is like, why did my childhood voice get chosen oftentimes over the hundreds of other young boys who were auditioning for these commercials? So what about like the quality of that voice might have been right for the commercials of that moment? So yeah, I'll just play a couple.
This is my family. They're really busy people. Even Spot. We don't get to see each other as much as we'd like. That's why I instituted Family Game Night. It's a special night once a week when we all get together as a family. We play games like Monopoly and Scrabble. We laugh a lot. Being together like this, it's important. My family's just grown up so fast, and I want to be there for them.
Institute your own family game night with these great family games from Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers.
Family Game Night. It's just a good idea I had.
That's a funny one. Let's do another animated one real quick. You'll see these animation drawings. I think also the way they drew these young boys is really interesting.
Danny, time for practice. No time for a snack? This is the job for new Animal drinkable yogurt. Strawberry explosion.
Cherry cool.
Captain Raspberry.
Fruity-licious. When you need a snack fast, drink Fruity-licious new Animal drinkable yogurt.
2, 1. Daddy?
New Danimals drinkable yogurt, fruity, fun, and fast.
Yeah, yeehaw. Um, so okay, so what I was kind of getting at before, well, let's find a good freeze frame here. Maybe the yeehaw will do. So I had a very raspy voice, and I had a lisp, and maybe I still kind of do, but I think what I'm trying to point out is that it wasn't crisp, it wasn't neutral, it wasn't smooth, it wasn't polished, it was rough and imperfect. I think giving it this air of authenticity, and this is really my main point of this little presentation, which is that whatever success I had in my strange child acting career was not really due to the fact that I was a good actor. I honestly don't think I was that skilled at acting. I think my success was due to the fact that I seemed to fit the mold of what our culture craved in that moment, which was a moment that I would describe as somewhat hyper-modernist, in that we were hungry for what read as real, and we were a little skeptical or allergic to what seemed slick or polished or mediated, mannered, and performed. I think this modernism was or this maybe hyper-modernism was a reaction to many things. But one thing I really want to make sure we remember is that this was the decade when something else unusual was happening, technoculturally speaking. Now, this period of time I'm referring to coincides almost exactly with the popularization of the internet. So the ubiquity of the web was happening, and the world was on the precipice of the kind of transformation that allows us to have this kind of presentation here digitally today. So I think that came along with an anxiety that always seems to be paired with major advancements in technology, a fear of what is fake and a fear of what is artificial. I think as a society, we were getting better and better at creating a copy of reality in the form of a vast digital network. And commercials were leveraging our desire for what seemed familiar and down to earth and quotidian, and again, very real. So let's watch another that I think highlights some of these points. This is a Campbell soup commercial.
Michael Strahan?
How about taking to Super Bowl 38 for you and your friends?
Cool.
Or how about going to the premiere of my new movie with me?
Andy Moore?
I'll throw in team jerseys.
Shopping spree.
Foamy feet.
Posters.
If you play Campbell Superstar Fantasy, you could have the stars playing for you. Find the code on the can, then ask your parents and go to mysoup.com to enter. Many will enter, few will win. Free entry and rules online at mysoup.com. Campbell's, it's got the goods.
Okay, so there are a couple of details of this commercial I just think are amazing and kind of hilarious and strange. So I'm slightly older here, you'll see. And the detail that I first want to point out is this. Look at the effort through which they go to make me seem like an everyday kid. They literally directed me to slurp this soup in this extremely, unmannered way to just like highlight my normal kidness. I mean, there's literally soup hanging out of my mouth as I exit the frame. So, I mean, then even further, they chose this clip when I'm pulling up my pants. Like, this is an intentional choice. I'm pulling up my pants as I approach the limo. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think they, there probably were hundreds of takes where I'm not pulling up my pants, but they chose the one that sprinkled in sort of a signifier of my normalness, my realness. And I even would say that presenting the football player and Mandy Moore as sort of these cartoon characters of rich celebrities further creates a juxtaposition of the real kid versus the fake celebrity. Okay, so I'm going to play a couple more that I think, and let you sort of come to some of your own conclusions about this stuff.
I like cartoon shows, cartoon movies, pretty much anything with a cartoon in it. So I got Prime Star, got all my favorite channels. And I didn't have to buy the dish, so I could afford it even on my allowance. My folks like Prime Star too. They get to watch tons of really cool movies and all kinds of sports. They love Prime Star, especially if I'm paying for it. Hey, no eating popcorn on my bed.
Call 1-800-PRIME-STAR for the dish you to buy to enjoy.
The group, you live by my rules.
Oh man, that one is just insane to me. Okay, let's play the BandAid one. This one was not my favorite.
You didn't get it wet. You still didn't get it wet. It's still not wet.
New BandAid brand Clear Water Block Plus bandages. Its waterproof seal blocks out water and germs better than ordinary bandages.
It's dry.
I had to literally change my clothes in between every take of that commercial to get dry clothes back on so they could soak them again. It was a really bizarre day of my childhood. Let's do one more here.
I think it's the best time in the world to be a cherry, because now they can top Jello pudding sundaes. Cool vanilla, smothered with rich chocolate fudge or caramel pudding. These new Jello sundaes, they're really gonna go places.
Jello, smile more.
A detail I'm actually just noticing of this one is, I think I have really bad teeth actually, and you'd think that a commercial kid would have these straight teeth, but I think the fact that they cast this guy with kind of crooked teeth is another telling detail. So something I think about a lot is that almost every commercial I ever did, the name of the role I was playing was almost always Boy One. I played, quote, Boy One, unquote, 100 times in my life. In film and TV shows, you have your character has a name and it's like Bobby or Andrew or Sam or whatever, and the character has a personality and traits that make him who he is or was. But in commercials, I was often cast as a sort of stand-in for our societal idea of what an American boy was or is. And I think, the idea is to be both specific but incredibly generic. So I wasn't really playing a real boy. I was playing the platonic form of a real boy. And of course, that kind of boy doesn't actually exist. So I've thought a bit about how this affected me in the real world as a kid, as Gideon Jacobs, and how it affected my development as a person. And I've spent some time talking to my parents about it, and I've talked to some therapists about it. And one of my theories is that my acting career made me think that in some way I had to perform boyhood rather than simply live it. What I mean by that is that I think it's possible that acting in these commercials sort of screwed with my sense of self, because what was being leveraged by these corporations wasn't my ability to perform, wasn't my ability to be someone else or to act. What was being leveraged was my ability to be me. I simply had a knack for being myself, even when there was other people in the room or a camera in the room. So I think this can be a little confusing for a kid. And to receive applause for performed authenticity. It is, in a way, I think, more confusing than receiving affirmation for something that is overtly a performance, like, say, playing, Romeo in Romeo and Juliet or whatever. What I'm saying is that having my early self turned into a character, having the real me transmogrified into this boy one over and over again, was kind of an existentially disorienting experience, and one that I'm still, 20 years later, trying to figure out and make meaning of and process. And it is a process. So, yeah, I appreciate you humoring me and allowing me to process this stuff in public today. And I hope that, the irony is not lost on me, that I'm processing this in a performance. Like, you're an audience. I'm still, to some extent, performing myself in public. So yeah, I think that's time is about up here. And that's kind of a good meta note to end on. So yeah, just me reflected in the spoon in some commercial set in probably New Jersey or something. So I guess I'll leave it at that. And thank you for watching my folder today. And thank you, Macro, for hosting this wonderful series. I'm Gideon Jacobs. You can, probably find some of my writing online if you'd like. It's just a Google or two away. I hope you enjoyed this. And I hope you have a really lovely day or night, depending on where you are. Bye-bye.